certainly do not want people to be seeing us in that way. What's the problem with that? Well, there's a huge problem with that because vulnerability is actually what builds connection. And welcome to States Unlocked. It's the place to learn about social psychology, human behavior, and learn practical tips on how you can improve your life. If you want to learn about yourself and understand yourself better and other people better, please subscribe and hit the bell. And without further ado, I'm going to just crack on with the topic of the video, which is vulnerability. So vulnerability is something that is really hard to do, in my opinion, because, well, it can be really hard. So we live in a society, at least in England, and I know in a lot of Western societies, which really values the persona. So the persona is what we like to show on social media, on Instagram, on Facebook, of look at me, I'm this character and this is what my life looks like. And you know, more often than not, it is all peaches and cream, it's all great. I mean, obviously you get the odd person here or there who does actually express vulnerability on these platforms, but most of us are actually trying to show everything as being hunky-dory. Now, this means that there's a complete barrier to vulnerability. Now, why would that be the case? Well, we don't like being vulnerable. When we're vulnerable, we feel weak. When we're vulnerable, we feel, you know, not in control. We don't feel at our strongest and at our best. And we certainly do not want people to be seeing us in that way. What's the problem with that? Well, there's a huge problem with that because vulnerability is actually what builds connection. And when you aren't vulnerable, you just don't build connection. Now, this is something in my own life that really took me a while to see, because in certain areas of my life with certain groups of people, I was, you know, have always been great at making connections, and with certain other people, not so much. Now, it was only in the last year where I started to realise, and certain types of connections too, and it was only in the last year I started to realise that, oh, it's because I'm showing up in a vulnerable way with this group of people, and with this group of people, I am totally not. Now, obviously that's because at some point or another, my brain associated this type of person, or this particular dynamic with, you know, safety, and this other dynamic, I was like, okay, this is not safe, and so it was affecting the way I was showing up. But the thing is, when I was vulnerable, people register, okay, you're not a threat, I can be vulnerable too, and their hearts open, and you can actually connect, and you can, all the persona can be put to one side, because really the persona is a load of bullshit. Like, the persona is just a tiny aspect of who we are. It's not really who we are, you know, it's a character. It's a character. It's who I perceive myself to be, or how other people perceive myself to be. And, you know, we really hold a lot of store on that because it's a protector, you know, it kind of actually, like, it's how we want to be seen. And, you know, this is just a call to action to whoever is watching this, to you watching this, to actually really be honest about how vulnerable you are with people. Now, it's really important to check in with this and to ask this question because, you know, you could be forfeiting potentially amazing relationships in your life because you're just not willing to be vulnerable. Now, with communication as well, this is a huge problem. Oftentimes people, when they're having arguments, they have these surface level arguments about, you know, you, I don't know, didn't do the dishes and this makes me feel, well, that's the point, they don't say that. You did the dishes, you're this, you're that, blah, blah, blah. And then they will come back with, you're so this, you're so that. Now, really, if they were to tune in to the emotion, they would actually see, maybe would say things like, when I see that the dishes haven't been done, I feel unloved and uncared about, and I feel a bit silly expressing that, but that is how my brain interprets it. And the other person might respond with, well, thanks for saying that, you know, I understand that, but that wasn't my intention at all, and blah, blah, blah. And actually, you've got to the root of the feelings there, because there's been this, you know, allowance for vulnerability So that builds a connection. But actually, when there's no vulnerability, that oftentimes there's no connection, and it leads to a lot of misunderstandings and a lot of upset, because we are a social creature. We need human interaction, human connection, human vulnerability. So I really invite you to think about this in yourself, because it's something really important. You know, vulnerability does build connection. It's really scary to be vulnerable. It really is. And I can see my timer's about to go off on my phone because I'm about to run out of storage space. So I'm going to merge the videos into two. So I'm just going to stop this right here. One sec. Hey, I'm back, and I'll continue for a few more minutes, but this is definitely a subject I want to come back to. So let me know if you're interested in this topic, because there's a lot to be said on it. But basically, in a nutshell, we need to be vulnerable, and the reason being is because being vulnerable is what makes us real, and it is what builds connection. Because, you know, if I'm real with you, you feel that. You feel that I'm being real with you, and you feel safe as a result. And also, most of the things we're being vulnerable about are emotions that, you know, if I express emotions to you that I feel uncomfortable with, the chances are you've also been hiding those feelings too, because we all have shame around, like, well, maybe some of us don't, but most of us do feel shame around expressing certain things or feeling certain things sometimes, because society really conditions us that we can't express certain things, we can't feel certain things, or, you know, and that's just messaging we've been getting since we were a child, since we were children in society. So, you know, obviously if someone's vulnerable, there's a reason it really connects with people, and that reason is because it actually can, you know, put in a word something you may be feeling yourself. You know, if I say, you know, I'm feeling really anxious or I'm feeling really nervous, you may feel like, oh, I feel that way, but I haven't been able to say it. But now I feel like I can say it because this person is giving me permission, because they're telling me they feel that way. So, but, you know, if I'm constantly acting like, oh yeah, I'm always confident, everything's great all the time, I don't, you know, putting on this front the whole time, how the hell, there's no point of connection. You cannot connect with me because I am not allowing any connection, because there's this persona which is this absolute wall up, okay? Now the persona obviously functions for a reason. It has a function. I'm not saying everyone deserves your vulnerability, that it's safe to be vulnerable with everyone. It isn't. Obviously you've got to be selective about who you're vulnerable with, but it's really important to be aware of, because as I said in my own life, it's something in one area of my life I was really good at, and in another area I just wasn't. It's still something I'm trying to work on, you know. It's something that is a challenge, you know. It's a constant challenge to try to be vulnerable, because it feels so vulnerable. It feels so, you can feel a bit unsafe, and you can feel a bit like, oh, I'm expressing insecurity, or I'm expressing something that I don't like. But as I said, to wrap up this video, it's really important. So I definitely invite you to think of a time when you have been vulnerable and how that has helped to build connection, and to try to replicate it more. Try to encourage that behavior more, because actually I genuinely mean this and believe this when I say it. I believe it will improve your life tenfold if you manage to cultivate this in yourself. I would love to hear about your own experiences with vulnerability, whether you find it easy or you find it difficult. So if you could leave that in the comments below, it would be great to read about that. Also, if you haven't subscribed already, it would be great. It really helps my channel out if you could, and if you want to. I mean, I don't want to force you if you don't want to, but if you want to, that's great. And if you could give it a like, and, you know, all that good stuff. And I will see you on the flip side. Ciao for now.